Hello, this is Rex from Rex Recites. To date, all of my videos have been my reciting of poetry, which is why we chose the name Rex Recites for the channel in the first place. However, this video and the next one, we're going to change formats quite a bit because they're going to be concerned with the U.S. presidential candidates for 2016. I have been a graphologist, a handwriting analyst, for some 58 years. Even though I have never done it as a full-time occupation, I have done much part-time work over those years, analyzing scripts of all kinds of famous and infamous people. This video will be concerned with Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, and Donald Trump. Before I start the actual analysis of their handwritings, look at the chart on the board, up on the board now, in which I show the three main foundations of graphoanalysis or handwriting analysis. These three symbolisms are prime in the whole idea of graphology: vertical symbolism, lateral symbolism, and depth symbolism. Now, if we go back to the vertical symbolism, you see the letter F, which invades all three zones of handwriting: the lower zone, the middle zone, and the upper zone. Okay, looking at the vertical symbolism part of the diagram, the middle zone represents the practical world, practical area. That's where most of the intelligence or communicative intelligence of handwriting occurs. The upper zone is the world of the abstract or the ideal, the theoretical, the spiritual, or terms of that nature. And the wider the loop is, the greater the activity you have in that area. Now, the lower zone represents the physical nature, desire for food, and all of the things that are necessary for physical existence. So whatever you take from the lower zone in this area and the upper zone in this area meet in the middle zone, and you follow out in the rightward direction to accomplish something. And so that's the idea behind the three zones. The lateral symbolism is right or left of directions. Now you can see in the word slant and the word she, the right direction and the left direction. And with the expansion of the loop here, you progress to the right. With the severe retracing here, even though there's a right slant, you're retracing that is going back to the left, which represents the past, and the right represents the future. Now we come to depth symbolism, and this is a gauging of the width of the stroke or of the amount of pressure put on the writing instrument by the writer. Now, if you're using a wet ink fountain pen, it's very much easier because you'll have a bigger flow of ink when you have more pressure. If you have another instrument like a ballpoint pen or a pencil, part of that is depending on the grooving in the paper. And you've all experienced, I'm sure, where you can actually feel the grooving from the back of the paper. Okay? So, next slide, Doug. Nobody wants to read this. Okay. Oh, what do you have in Trump? Now, I know that Trump is the favorite of you all, so I will try not to insult him. Okay, so...
That'd be okay.
Pardon me?
That would be all right.
Oh, would be all right? Okay.
Bury him.
So the few remarks that I have here, just some basic things. I mean, if I were doing a full analysis of his handwriting, I would want a whole page of writing, you know. to look at everything in more detail and put everything together and evaluate it. And some of these statements would have to be qualified in one way or another to get a complete analysis. But this is only a small piece of writing sitting in this little note up here. Okay, so let's look up here. Deeply investigative and analytical mind. What shows this? Look at the signature. All the angularity. Sharp angles, up and down. That's the investigative and analytical mind that absorbs information sometimes without having to think about it. Now, Trump is known.
Last again.
Pardon?
Say that last again, without having to what?
With sometimes realization comes without having gone through it because it's almost automatic. Because your investigative and analytical is so strong that it just comes to you almost out of the blue, right? And one analysis of his writing that I looked up on the web calls him a genius. And one or two of you might disagree with that. But anyway, that is one mark of a superior mind that works all the time and almost automatic sometimes, and can tackle any problem and get the gist of it and elaborate on it. Now, many of the things the remarks that he makes sound like they're off the cuff. He shoots from the hip. And I guess there is a quality of that, but all of this is behind that. So for every word that he says, I think he has a volume of information about that particular subject that is not appropriate to mention at the time. So not a shred of compromising tendency, okay? Look at this stroke, for example. Intense stubbornness goes right down and stops. You can't budge me. Here I stand, and here I'm going to stay. And if you don't like it, go do something else. Now, and he goes up with this unnecessary loop, which is uncalled for, graphically speaking, or any means of communication, because the basic purpose of writing is to communicate, isn't it? And anything that interferes with communication is at least partly negative, isn't it? And so this is unnecessary, and coupled with the stubbornness of the lower stroke here, he goes up into the upper zone and ends down here in the lower zone, and so the stubbornness is intensified because the ideas that he has that this loop represents are set in stone, so to speak. Now you see, if he had come out to the right here with a stroke back to the middle zone, would have been entirely different. But it's down there buried, right? Like a very buried treasure. And one writer, one analyst refers to this as a phallic symbol. He-Man, right?
Yeah.
Okay, stubborn to the nth degree, we talked about that. Extremely heavy emotions, very heavy writing. Is it here, it's sitting here, and up here in the little two, which we'll talk more about in a minute. Now, after I did this and it was sort of all figured out, I wish I had not used the word duplicity, because I meant secrecy. Now, duplicity is secrecy with a kind of a sinister motive. And there could be some of that too in it there, but I meant to say secrecy because that's a sort of a non-judgmental term, isn't it? You know? So look at all the clogging of some of the lowercase letters. See the unnecessary strokes going through and partly clogging the open space. That's one of the classic signs of secrecy. And if there's a lot of that in a page of writing, it's hard to believe a word that man says, or woman. Oh, by the way, when I say man or he, that means everybody, including women, okay? So he's very secretive. That shows that the strokes inside the letters, and also the very deep feelings. I mean, if somebody with deep feelings is always airing them, that would, to say the least, bore everybody, wouldn't it, after a while? And there are other negative effects to it as well. Now, but that's his signature. Now, his signature is especially important because it's personal identification of somebody, right? And it has more value many times than the writing does, the body of the writing itself. But now, if you look at these two, going up here, these two strokes, they're retraced instead of having a loop. So some of his investigative tendencies, which is shown by the upstrokes of the triangles here, go way up into the upper zone, the world of the ideal and the non-desirable. And so he has two of those unnecessary strokes. And so, to say the least, he's a very strong individual. And of course, nobody agrees with everything that anybody says, but his personality is very strong. Now, this signature is roughly the same, it's smaller, of course. And that note up there, what is one of the first things you notice about those 4 lines in the note? Definite upslope to the lines, isn't it? And what do you mean when they say, well, I feel up today? That's optimism. Looking on the bright side, on the favorable side, the optimistic side. But yet, there's as much pressure in the note, in the words, as there is in the singular, isn't there? So they're very heavy emotions. Okay, the next slide. I'm taking too long, I think, because we've only got this limited amount of time. Okay, Bernie Sanders. And let's look at the signature first. Strong sense of caution. And one thing that shows that is this long final stroke here, like he's fending something off, or is very careful about going to the next step. Caution. And if that is prominent in a page of writing, then you have a very cautious person. Of course, I suppose everybody displays caution, some degree of some time or other. At the same time, look at this initial structure in the S, straight and hard. That indicates initiative and going ahead with an idea. No fooling around about it, no preliminary stroking, no circle or anything, just right to the point. That's what that indicates. And why do you suppose I said secrecy in relation to personal life? Because if this word were isolated by itself, could you ever read it? But you know what it said. Okay, so unconsciously, he is more secretive about his personal life, qualities affecting him, and especially not necessarily his family name. More secretive and personal things. Okay, overblown sense of personal worth. What do you suppose indicates that? A very huge capital letter. Very, very much bigger. Too big to be pleasing. That capital letter is about 7 or 8 times the size of the small, isn't it? It's out of proportion. So it's an overblown ego. Right? Now, how many of you have these huge capital letters? Don't answer that question. I don't want to know.
He's confessing.
Yeah? Okay, Bruce. Well, I wouldn't have to see your writing to know that anyway. Okay, let's see, something else. Heavy pressure here, front question. Now, see, I got the impression before I even looked at his writing at all, months ago, in many speeches and his reacting to Hillary and to other people, Ted Cruz and so forth, that it was kind of forced. It seemed to be it's kind of a forced thing, And so that's Bernie. And this is a very smaller writing, but it reinforces. It's got heavy pressure. Okay, one thing, now, and this is supposed to be an E, I suppose, that his first name ends with an E. Is that an E? Well, anyway, he's got this huge lip going up that isn't called for. And so it could be the positive or negative, but now look, he goes down and stops. This is a stubborn stroke. I could be saw in Trump's right. Okay, next slide. No. Now here is everybody's grandma, except mine. Okay, level-headed and unexcitable by nature. What shows that? Basically, up and down. Almost no right or left slap to the letters, right? Up and down. That means cool, calm, and collected. Except, a person who is cool, calm, and collected can be pushed into displaying anger and stuff, right? But she is not naturally inclined for that. And I have noticed, I think, and what I watched of them on TV, that she didn't begin getting what you could call sort of almost nasty until Trump had started the process, right? I don't know if you agree with me or not. That's the way it seemed to me. Strong, well-founded self-image. Her capital letters are in proportion pretty much to the small letters. And so her personal ego is not overblown. It's pretty normal, you know. It's strong. It's got pretty heavy pressure. But there's nothing there's very little artificial about it. And see these strokes like the H on Hillary, and this little bow on the T bar here. Well, these indicate some element of secrecy, but also of self-control. And if a page of writing of a person is full of this kind of stroke, why, it becomes stronger. Some signs of frustration, for example, right here is an abrupt stop, and an Indian stroke like this, if it has on camera, it goes up a little bit higher and not so much pressure. See, the pressure on the end is even, I think, a little bit stronger than the pressure of the letter itself. And so that's stubbornness also. And here's a stubborn stroke, you know, going straight down and stopping. A lower zone formation, ideally speaking, should come back to the middle zone, right? If it doesn't come back to the middle zone to accomplish something in the practical world, it says down there, and like John Brown said, body smaller than the grave, right? Okay. Is any reaction or question about this one? And that's it for the three major candidates. I have another video on the five of the minor candidates who have dropped out recently from the active race. This is Rex from Rex Recites. Goodbye.